This is Stories from the Hackery, a podcast about the students, alumni, and community members that continue to shape Nashville Software School. Nashville Software School is the nation's first nonprofit coding bootcamp where a person with aptitude and motivation can gain the skills needed for a career in tech. For more information, visit us at NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com. Welcome back to Stories from the Hackery. I'm John Wark, the founder and CEO of Nashville Software School. And today I'll be having a conversation with Mark Bont, who's both a relatively recent graduate and a longer time graduate, because Mark's done a couple of boot camps at NSS, most recently data engineering. So we're going to talk a little bit with Mark about his journey into a career in tech. So Mark, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't we start with just a little bit brief self-introduction. So what's the Mark Bont personal elevator pitch? Who's Mark Bont?
Well, I'm a husband. I'm a father of 3 children that are growing up quickly. I'm a musician turned software developer / data engineer. And I'm a curious, lifelong learner. I learned a lot in NSS, still learning. And I'm someone who strives to be a good teammate.
All right, great. Well, those are all good things. So as a musician, what instrument or instruments did you play?
Yeah,
Or do you play?
Yeah, so started out playing guitar in a band, and then we needed a keyboard player. So I was the one, I'll do that, so I got into that. And when you have keyboards, you're dealing with electronics. And I found out real quick, you can go out of your synthesizer into a computer. And that was literally the connection. and then I started tinkering around and started just exploring the whole world and then I was hooked.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's always seemed to me that's one of the similarities of music at NSS. We're in Nashville. We've had a few musicians come to NSS, but it's like music and I think tech, software development, and data engineering, and they're both kind of bottomless subject areas, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things you can get into and learn and tweak and kind of never get bored. As long as you're curious, there's ways to pursue it.
Yeah,
so
there's not enough time.
Yeah. So now we always like to talk with folks about the Nashville part of their story because we still view ourselves as a very Nashville-centric community nonprofit, even though, since we're online now, we've got students from all over the country. But so are you a native Nashvilleian? I don't remember, or
so
did you come here at some point?
My family moved here when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I grew up in Hendersonville, a little north of Nashville. And we've stayed in Nashville. I always kind of wanted to leave to, move somewhere else and do something different. You always want to leave home or whatever and explore. The music side of my past kind of satisfied a lot of that. We traveled a ton all over the place for a long time. And so I kind of got my fill and got to have some really good experiences. But yeah, we stayed here. My wife, she moved down from Iowa. She moved to Nashville. And so we stayed. We're still here. Not in Hendersonville anymore, but yeah, still here.
Okay. All right. So for all intents and purposes, you're a native
right. Yeah,
Nashvilleian.
I've seen it change quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, imagine so. Well, so you've had the opportunity to take 2 full boot camp experiences at NSS. Oh, you were in the 3rd cohort of
Correct.
The software engineering program,
Yeah.
which for those listening, if you don't remember NSS's history, there's no quiz. That was the program that we launched in collaboration with Amazon and was based on an internal Amazon program. And the point of the collaboration was to open up this internal training program at Amazon to people who were not Amazon employees to give them yet another way to attract junior talent. Then the tech layoffs came in 4th quarter 2022, and Amazon decided, well, we're not hiring anybody, including the guys from our own program eventually, as it turned out. So anyway, so you graduated from the 3rd software engineering cohort right at the time that the tech job market kind of turned because of the layoffs that started by all the big tech guys. So anyway, so you graduated at the end of December 2023.
Correct.
Then period of time passes and you did some continuing ed stuff, which we'll come back to. But then you jumped into our, what at that time was a brand new program, our data engineering boot camp, where you did the second cohort of that, which was a part-time evening cohort, which finished up in May of this year. Mm-hmm. So you've had a long learning journey here.
Right.
But going back kind of to the beginning of it, what sparked your interest in getting into software development, right? If we kind of go back to the decision to do a software engineering or software development boot camp, what drove that interest? What brought you kind of to us?
Yeah. Well, so when my wife was pregnant with our son, our first, we were kind of at a crossroads. The band I was in, they were brothers, but everybody's kind of going different directions. And my wife was the one, I like to joke, my wife was the one with the real job. And so I became at that point a stay-at-home dad for a long stretch. And in that time, we had our children, and during that time I would sit there and open up my laptop and start to build my stuff. It started out to make little projects for making music to help me generate little ideas for music. And I didn't know anything. All I knew was how to record in a recording program, and
right.
Barely knew how to even manage my own files and that kind of thing. But I just started tinkering, and I found some things that let me just super entry level, not even sort of code the way that like, traditional code. It's still object oriented, but like graphical and very easy to wrangle things, and almost like nodes and moving things around. And I didn't know what a for loop was. I didn't know anything, but you just start messing around with things, and you start to dream up ideas, and then you start to kind of maybe work backwards into like, well, how would I make that? How would I do this? And then you run into a wall and you're like, well, I need to do this. I figure it. So you sort of just kind of build, you're bootstrapping yourself up from nothing and figuring out how to solve a problem. Right. And so I just kind of just kept doing that. And then I got to a certain point where I said, I have to go further. I'm kind of at the limit of what I can do on my own, and I need to go somewhere that somebody's going to basically give me a curriculum and kind of push me through it. More of a better way is hold my hand through it and guide me. I just needed a real clear path, and then NSS was perfect for that because they gave me that and more, but then they also helped me. You all helped me develop myself for the business world, because if you're a musician, you're not too worried about your LinkedIn, you're not too worried about your resume and all those things.
Yeah, what resume, right?
Yeah. Your resume is what you're doing on stage, essentially.
Yeah,
and
right.
The things you've done. So you all helped me develop all of that, and I was basically, like I said, starting from ground zero. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's several threads to what you've just said, so maybe we can untangle a couple of those. But so really driven by a sense of curiosity initially. Right?
Yeah.
Sort of the same thing you were talking about, the keyboards leading you into the electronics, and
right.
But so that curiosity and some self-exploration, right? Mm-hmm. Which then it sounds like got you to the point where it's like, hey, I kind of enjoy this, and I feel like I could go further with it. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, but I'm sort of
that's
trying. True. But then, how do I do it? Right? I feel like I need a guide now. Right?
Yes.
But you've already lit the fuse.
Right.
Before finding us, which is, again, it's a great way to kind of get into it because you already know you're interested. Right.
Yeah. That's where I needed. I needed more. I realized I'd capped what I could do on my own, and I needed more. And I needed somebody that helped me just get a handle on the landscape of what, even though I felt like coming in, I knew a bunch of things that I taught myself or researched. I got in and realized I didn't hardly know anything, There's still so much more to learn. And then the other thing too that I kind of didn't mention yet, but you have 3 kids, and you sit there and you go, what if something happened to my wife? And I need to be able to support 3 kids, and I didn't have a really solid foundation to be able to do that. And so that was another motivating factor for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And that can be a pretty powerful underlying driver, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
That can keep you focused when you start bouncing off the walls of trying to figure out some of the stuff in software engineering.
Yeah.
Great. So as you got more into it, and maybe you found this even before you got to NSS, were you seeing similarities or any alignment with your experience as a musician with doing software development? Or was this just like a jump into a totally alien thing?
No, not entirely. I mean, like I said, there was a ton of things that I was not even aware of, but there were things along the way that were like, oh, I've seen this, I've seen, and those are probably helpful moments for me to keep me going too, because you start to realize that there's a lot of things that you don't know, and that can be real disorienting and overwhelming. But then in the moment, it can be it can be frustrating because it's something new and maybe you don't understand it, but then you just stick with it, and then you keep going and you come back to it, or it resurfaces, you come across it again later and you're like, somehow it worked itself out in your head and now it's not so scary or so unfamiliar, and you can handle it. And that's kind of that whole process for me, was all the things I did on my own, just grappling with like, what is all this? And then every now and then there's little things that would kind of cross back over, and I'd be like, okay, I got this one, maybe I didn't have it yesterday, but I got it today,
But I got it today. Right. Yeah. The learning genie overnight got me.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah. You've probably heard me say, maybe at your class orientation or something, that we learned after we started school that the single best positive indicator for aptitude in programming were you a musician, right?
Yeah.
There is some sort of cognitive alignment or similarity between programming languages, but the logical structure, music is all logical structure.
Yeah, it's logic and math.
And mathematical relationships, as long as you're doing Western music.
Right.
So and at its core, that's what computer science is too, right? And then programming itself, or software development, then is the craft of applying that, and playing keys or playing a guitar is a craft of applying the musical theory in the same way. So that seems to work really well for musicians, I think, both the cognitive similarities, but also I think the learning the craft part. Lots of repetitions, getting to the point where you're okay making mistakes. Because if you don't get okay with making mistakes, you don't get there in either of the disciplines, right? You just got to be okay with powering through, right?
Yeah.
So, it's in some respects, it's like, this is a great town to teach software development because we've got so many musicians that would actually like to make a living someday. Right. So
one thing I would add to that, as far as the relationship between musicians and programmers, is music. It's kind of like, especially if you're writing music, it's kind of like a puzzle, that you have to kind of figure out. And that's, and maybe if you're a musician for a while, you sort of like have like trained your brain to enjoy that process, or like be, to sustain through it, to be persistent through it, to try to get it to a final endpoint that you say, okay, the song's done. It might be done to me a different, if you're working on the same song, it might not be done to you, but to me, in my process, we got here, and this is the final product. And music's a little bit more fluid than software engineering, maybe, because although the common thing that's always said is it depends, right? Same thing in music too. It depends on all these different factors, but that persistence, I think, is something that helps when you're in software engineering, because it's a puzzle and you're trying to get to this end state that is like the ideal state. But I think that practice helps also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think this is a second or third time I think you've mentioned persistence, and That's a theme we're going to come back to a couple more times, I think. But so another thing you mentioned there, though, when you were talking about NSS is what we call the career development side of it, right? Because like you said, as a musician, you don't do a lot of formal interviewing. You don't do lots of, you never, I mean, it's like, yeah, come and see me play, or here's my demo,
Right.
or whatever. Whereas the process of interviewing for and securing a technical job, particularly a first one when you're just trying to get a career started, which is always, that's the hardest gig to get no matter what your career path is, that is first one. So you talked about the things that sort of NSS taught you in terms of career dev, which is kind of, we think of career development as having two pieces. There's the piece that happens during the boot camp, which is here's what a job search looks like. Here's how you interview. Here's what the STAR method is. Here's what a good resume looks like. Here's how you get your LinkedIn profile. Here's the things that are important, right? Then there's the post-graduation part, which is the, oh yeah, now I actually got to go find
You
a
have
job.
to go do it.
Yeah, I got to go do it. Oh crap. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that and, how that was helpful, what you found once you did start doing your job search?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all just, again, like just doing it. I mean, NSS has been great because y'all helped me. Like I said, I didn't have any of it. I mean, maybe I had the one good thing that, being a musician, going out, you're always meeting people. So you're always talking to people, you're networking. And so I had a lot of rep to doing that, meeting people and everything. But I didn't have, again, no formal interview experience, no resume, no LinkedIn, no real way to present myself. But NSS was great because y'all helped me get my reps. There's not only just the resume and the LinkedIn and making sure everything was tightened up there, but just the mock interviews. I had a couple interviews that were like, things totally went off the rails. And it was like, okay, what are you going to do right now? Are you going to fold and crumble? Or are you going to bounce back? You're going to just say, well, give me another one. Let's just do another, sign me up for another one. I don't care. Like, that's kind of the mentality I took, even though that's not a natural mentality for me. Maybe others it is, but it's easy to say, well, that totally went off the rails and it wasn't good. And yeah, sulking a little bit, sure. But what are you going to do now? Because that, again, quitting doesn't get you anywhere other than wherever you are today. So you got to get up and you got to do the next one. Even if that one failed, do the next one, and try to figure out what you can do better between this failure and the next, hopefully not a failure, but the next opportunity.
Well, so graduate December 2023, the post tech layoffs job slump is in full blown everything right at that point, which for a couple of years affected all levels of seniority in software development in the tech industry specifically, but particularly juniors, right? Because there's a lot of intermediates and seniors had been laid off who all of a sudden were willing to work for junior salaries. So it was hard for juniors. So one thing you did was start to attend continuing ed classes at NSS, because one of the things we did when the slump happened is we took a couple of we had like two continuing ed classes, I think at the time, or three. We quickly made those free for our seekers, meaning the people who graduated from a boot camp like you were at the time, who were still looking for that first job. And I know you took the advanced SQL class, I think was probably the first one.
First thing, yeah.
And then you've really embraced the continuing ed classes since then, leading up to us making data engineering available. So how are you thinking about that, right? The continuing ed, and you really embraced that. What were your drivers there for doing that?
Yeah. Well, when I graduated the software engineering course, I took the Amazon interview and did that. And not because I wasn't prepared, but I just hadn't done a whole lot of those really anyway, and I didn't feel like I did that great on the exam, and so
Well, an Amazon interview is not exactly the world's best first interview.
sure, right? Yeah. So I had some good advice from a friend. He said, if you're gonna fail upwards, and just keep failing until you work your way up into something that is a success. That was a really good piece of advice that stuck with me, that kept me going. But I just said, okay, well, we're finished up with this course, and I started looking at different, go to AI and say, well, here's who I am. Here's what I like to do. What would be some companies out there that do what I like to do? I started there, and just kind of dove into things. But then, the market was hurting. And so at the same time, I was still in touch with a lot of my classmates, and I was seeing how everybody else was going about it, and hearing a lot of stories of putting out massive amounts of resumes to companies and getting basically either immediate rejections or no response. And I just said, nope, that's not for me, not yet. Even though I knew so much more than I started with, I still was kind of like, if I go into an interview, I don't know that I can totally still speak confidently about this giant landscape of things. I just felt like there's still more, there's still more that I want to learn. There's still more that I need to learn. I went from that software development course right into the SQL stuff. And even though the software course was like, I don't know, 11 months or something, 10, 11 months.
Nine
months. Okay,
yeah.
maybe it felt like 10 or 11.
Probably felt like 15.
Right. But even though there was that much time, it was from like 9 to 4, 5 days a week. And even with all that, we had, I don't know, we probably spent a few days on SQL. We touched on so many other things. And I felt I came out of that going, well, I need, one of the notes I put was learn SQL, and that was one of the things that Charlie and Gene, who were the instructors, that was one of their pieces of advice: go learn SQL now. And so, and then that popped up, and I was like, I can't believe that's free. Sign me up, And so then that was, I can't remember how long that was, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a couple nights a week. So it wasn't too long.
Whatever, 7 or 8 weeks, 2 nights a week. Right.
But so I just signed me up, and I just went through that, and I was like, okay, now I know that a little bit better. And then Lynn, she reached out and asked if I'd be interested in being a teacher assistant. I said, sign me up. It's uncomfortable, but hey, we're getting used to this, right? And so I showed up. I showed up for that, and I like to think I helped people. I also probably flailed a lot while I was doing it, but the best way to learn something is to explain it to other people. So I was trying to embrace that mentality. Yeah, and just to be honest, I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't believe that this stuff was free, and I kept expecting you all to say, "Hey, we're good. You got enough free stuff," But I felt like I was like sliding through, through the system here, not getting busted for signing up for all these free things, but it was not because I was trying to take advantage by any means. I just really wanted to learn the next thing, and again, I couldn't believe it was free, so I just kept signing up. Whenever something would pop up, I think at one point. Through the data engineering thing, I signed up for that, and that was a big course right at the end here. And then another thing popped up, and I was like, well, maybe I could swing, that's not on the same night as my other course. And so
I could do both.
I submitted, and then somebody got back to me, and they're like, maybe you should just stick to one. Okay, fair, right? Let's just focus on one. But, maybe a little overambitious, but I just saw the opportunity. It's like, I couldn't believe that it was being offered for free. And I get a certificate at the end, and I can put it on my resume, put it in my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And here's the list. Here's the list of all the things I've done. And hopefully by the end of it, and I feel a lot better, obviously, at this point after all the things. But now it's like I feel like I can have a decent conversation about that's coherent and halfway seem like I know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, so I hear that I'm not quite ready for interviews yet. I don't quite know everything yet. There's a term we use for that sometimes, a real common challenge with learning anything new, really, I think, but we certainly see it is imposter syndrome, right? And one of the things I've said for a long time is our programs are long enough to get the skills to get a junior job, but they're also long enough for you to realize how much more there is
Absolutely.
to learn, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know that when you start. But after the boot camp, you're like, oh my God, this is bottomless.
Right.
And that can be intimidating, right? Or okay, I've been in class, I've been doing this stuff, I built some stuff, but that's not like being on the job. So what do you think was the imposter syndrome element of that, right? If at all, but what's imposter syndrome and what's just, hey, it's a crappy job market, but the more I can learn, the more valuable I'm getting. So, and I don't want to give up. Back to your persistence thing.
Sure.
There's clearly a thread of persistence through all this.
Right.
But I wonder about the imposter syndrome and what you'd say to, people who are breaking into this about that challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely a real thing. Especially for somebody that's coming from basically nothing, no real tech experience other than your own exploration. But again, one thing I learned from Nashville Software School is learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And all the reps, all the things that we did, all the things that were uncomfortable or not easy, inconvenient. We're going to go do this interview. Okay, well, that's not comfortable or really convenient for me as an introvert or whatever, And so, but hey, like, here's the thing: if you want to get a job and if you want to put yourself out there, you got to put yourself out there. You gotta do something. You got to meet, maybe not even halfway, but even just meet a little bit closer to your goal. And
the job's not going to come and find you.
Right.
You got to go knock it down, sit on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. But just the imposter syndrome part, it's a mental thing, right? It is. It doesn't mean that you are an imposter. It's just that means it's not that you're an imposter. It means you just don't have the experience yet.
Yeah. You're still worried that you don't deserve to be here doing it, which is BS, right? And but it's one thing for somebody to say, oh, that's BS, Mark. Don't worry about it. It's another thing to believe.
Yeah, that internal battle.
Yeah. Well, and it turns out, the research on imposter syndrome, which is a very real thing, it's very common amongst all the creative disciplines, right? Because there's not an objective standard of measurement, right?
Right.
Who are the 10 greatest guitar players? Well, we could argue that one all day long.
Yeah.
Dwayne Owen and Richard Thompson are on the list, and I won't change my mind. Anyways, but, it's particularly when the job market's bad. And we also you're going to hear no.
Right.
Even when the job market's good.
Yeah.
You're likely to hear no. And that can be, that's discouraging for experienced people. And when you're trying to crack in, it's doubly discouraging.
Right, for sure.
So now you've got a great story about how you really nailed the job that you got. But before we get there, let's get to your last boot camp, which is data engineering. Was there anything specific about data engineering that attracted you to that? Or was it, it's the next one on the list.
Yeah. Well, right when I finished the SQL course, I had an opportunity to work at Pro Football Focus. So I'm a musician, but I grew up, loving football and all that stuff. And Pro Football Focus, it was right around the draft. It was, I think, April 24. They posted a thing on their X profile about how you can sign up and try out for their data collection team. And I'm kind of doing this kind of in between, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But hey, I'll just sign up and try it and push myself into it, and ended up, there was no interviews. You learn what they're doing, and then they test you. And then if you're good enough or, fast enough, then they'll hire you as a rookie data analyst. And so I signed up and actually made it on the team. And so I was working to help them collect their data on football games and doing all that. And it was great. It was so great. And they did a lot of rookie calls for people that were just trying to figure out the industry, just figuring out there's a lot of career advice that was really good. Again, sign me up. I'll show up and listen and take notes, and learned a lot of really cool stuff, met some really cool people. the the problem, I guess, if you want to call it that, is that there's a really, really small window for data analysts to get full-time jobs. You have to be just totally crushing it, and all your games are
Right.
like great scores. Some of those guys were finishing games in real time, which was mind-blowing. And at the same time, the data engineering thing popped up, and my wife's sitting here going, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, this data engineering thing popped up. And she's like, oh, another course. And I said, well, here's the thing. I could really try to focus and try to get through this tiny eye of a needle, or I can go do this data engineering course, and then basically a whole market opens up to me,
Right.
And so then it's like I have a skill set that a lot more companies could use. And so I signed up, and yeah, I mean, and that was it. That was sort of what led me to that. But it was more the fact that I needed more, but then I thought that the opportunities I had, I just felt like it would, provide me with more opportunity.
So you kind of fell into the data side
Yeah.
of the industry, which it turns out I think was really good timing, because there's a bunch of drivers that are making data engineering. Data engineering's always been a thing in the industry, but the whole AI, generative AI, all of the stuff going on is really driving the importance of data engineering. And you hit it I think at a pretty good time to get in. And you had the foundation of all the software engineering you'd done to start with, because I guess most data engineering is server-side development. Mm-hmm. And the whole SE program basically is server-side development. And then you'd done advanced SQL, you'd done the pro football internship or whatever that was. So you got to do a deep dive on the data engineering, another 9-month program, although this one was part-time, so not quite as intense as your first one. But then that led you to, I guess, back to a connection you'd already had.
Right.
With the company that has since become your employer, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And where you had was it a friend or a network contact or?
Yeah. A former NSS grad. And he was the one that originally told me about NSS, because he had just graduated, and it had gotten to a point where I was talking about all the little programs I was making for my music stuff. And he's like, well, you should check out NSS. And he had just graduated, and he got a job right away. So good for him.
Yeah, well, that was a different time, right? So
yeah, exactly. And so
go ahead.
Are
we allowed to say his name?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Who was it?
It's Theo Carr.
Yeah, remember the name.
He was
yeah.
a data. He was on a data course. So, but he.
I think data analytics.
Yeah, data analytics.
Yeah.
So, but he did that,
cool.
and got a job at Donor Bureau, and then he, a little while down the road, it was still during the software engineering course, he referred me to his boss for an interview. And so I did, and I was kind of asking him what the job involved, and said there was a lot of SQL, and he said I think they were C#.net kind of a infrastructure. But anyway, so I had the interview coming up, and I had a SQL lesson coming up like that week, and so I was reading ahead in my lessons to prime myself on the SQL stuff, and like, I don't know, here's an interview coming. Let's just, again, sign me up. So I did the interview, and I thought it went okay, but unfortunately they said, thank you, but no thank you. We're good. We're going to go with a different candidate. And it turns out that was one of the best things that could have happened, because I felt like I wasn't ready yet. I hadn't even finished the course. And so that was probably true, but then also it kept me going, because it's just, keep going, keep learning. That was sort of what I took from it. And so it was another good experience. That was a real out in the wild interview, not a mock. That was a real interview. And
right.
A little intimidating, but we got through it. And like I said, didn't get the job, but that was probably the best thing for me, because then I just said, just keep signing me up for the next course, the next course, the next course. And then if you believe in speaking things into existence, that's sort of what happened for me. I was taking this data engineering course, and that we're fast forwarding a lot, and my wife is saying, okay, I'd kind of started talking to her about, after this course, I'm really going to start interviewing for jobs, because now I feel like I've got a really solid foundation under me. And to me, the honest next step was I need a job because I need to keep learning. It wasn't, I need to get paid. Sure. It would be great to get paid, but my next step just for my career development was that I needed a real job because I needed to learn more. I keep signing up and keep learning, but once you get to that point, you need a job to really push you even further. Anyways, we're going to go to Zany's, the comedy club. And my wife was like, Theo's going to be there. You're going to get a job at Donor Bureau. You just need to get and I was like, okay, we've already done this once. Like, I don't know. But she's like, Theo's going to be there and we're going to talk about your data engineering you're doing, all the things you're doing. And then you're going to get an interview and get a job over there as a data engineer. And I was like, okay, whatever. But it almost literally, I would say it literally happened the way that she said. Because we showed up. And we're sitting there hanging out, and Theo goes, "So what are you up to now after all this time?" And I said, well, "Just that." I said, "I'm doing this data engineering course. I'm coming up on my capstone." And he said, his response was, "Oh, really? We've actually been looking for a junior data engineer." And I said, "Well, hey, let's get a cup of coffee. Let's talk." And so we did, and then he introduced me to who is now my boss, and the rest is history. But then, I should say, at that point in the game, I had a coherent conversation enough well, I knew what I was talking about at this point.
Yeah. Well, and was that conversation before or after your capstone?
That was before. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because then you took an interesting step with your capstone, as I understand it.
Right. Yeah.
Because you actually, as I understand it, you actually built something. Your capstone was based on something that potentially they could use.
Right.
So I guess either something you heard about in that conversation or something that, that Theo told you about. I don't know what it was.
Well, I started just kind of going, well, here's your opportunity. I guess I just kind of realized that either you could go all in or you could just kind of half it. You could just sign up and show up and talk and, okay, cool. Here's this thing I did, this project. But I was like, well, here's my opportunity. I'm just going to try to see if I can hit it out of the park. And so we have access to AI these days. And so I just created a prompt for ChatGPT and Claude to go do a bunch of deep research on the company and brought it back and then started trying to identify what would be the most, because we're a data company. So what would be the most useful data sets for what Donor Bureau could use? And so there was a few that popped up. And for me, it was the Federal Election Commission data set, FEC. And so I just started building that, and I built it, and I learned a ton more about what Donor Bureau does in that world. And so I got it all the way to the point where I was doing my presentation and showing, well, my mistake was a lot of PII at first, a lot of personal information.
Whoops.
Yeah. I learned about that, about aliasing people and all that. You learn the hard way most times. I do, at least. But got it to that point where I speak intelligently about specifically what Donor Bureau does. And I think it took, hopefully it said something that I took the time and energy to learn about what the company does rather than making it about me. It was more about, here's what I think I can bring to you.
Absolutely. I think to the point you made, it seemed like this was manifesting itself anyways.
Right.
So doubling down.
Play into it, right?
And it's not like that capstone wouldn't have been valuable if things didn't work out with Donor Bureau, because you were attacking a real problem that a real organization had. And that would have been impressive, in my opinion. That would have been impressive to other employers as a capstone too, instead of just something you just dreamed up out of nowhere. You could really speak to a context and things you learned, like don't include PII data and stuff. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The healthcare guys would have loved to hear about that. So to me, that approach just really resonates as being spot on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you also, with some encouragement from your wife, continue to take advantage of your network. Right.
Yeah.
Because it is not always early that your network bears fruit. As you learn, sometimes you just have to give it some time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The thread of persistence that runs all through this, because it would have been so easy given the 2 years that passed, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe slightly more,
Yeah.
from graduation in SE
Yeah.
through the continuing ed into data engineering,
Yeah.
it would have been so easy to have that just completely discourage you and have you say,
Yeah.
I got to find something else.
Yeah. One thing I would tell myself before each course, especially the first one, right, was guess what? Christmas is going to be here before you know it. When Christmas comes, do you want to say I graduated a boot camp, or do you want to say, well, I'm still here wherever I was, 8-9 months ago?
Right.
Every time I would do a course, it's like same thought. What do you want to be at the end of this? Where do you want to be? And so I just couldn't bear the thought of Christmas coming around and me not having completed that course. And that was, for me, the motivating thing.
Yeah.
But the one thing I want to add to my capstone is that I actually ended up getting the job before the capstone was done. I was working on it, but I ended up getting the job before. And so one of the benefits that came out of that was that once I was on the job, and then I was also wrapping up on the data engineering course, but because I had already focused on the work that Donor Bureau does, my capstone became an onboarding project. And then and actually it's on my boss's desk, but it became a pipeline proposal for a whole platform of things that we can build to help with their data situation. So it was more than just about getting the job. It actually turned into things that are useful and hopefully are going to be used within the company itself too.
Which is an amazing payoff,
Right.
On all the work you did for so long.
Right.
To have it then, and it's a win for them too.
Yeah.
So just kind of an amazing story of, I think, persistence, motivation, and you had the advantage of 3 kids to remind you every day of one of the reasons you were doing it. And it sounds like a very supportive,
Yes.
at least as you tell the story, a very supportive and very patient wife,
Right.
who also kept you focused a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
She was a good motivator. Let's put it that way.
but yeah, and a tremendous outcome, right? And in the job market we've been in, with junior opportunities fewer, right? It takes significant persistence,
Yeah.
right? And when the job market was great, so 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, sometimes it almost seemed like the jobs actually did find people, even though I know it was never that easy. You still had to interview, you still had to,
Yeah.
you still had to fog a mirror at least, but it was easier because there was so much demand. It has not been the case the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But you stuck with it because you started when it seemed like the market was still wide open. Mm-hmm. And Amazon, right? Wow, they're going to interview all of us. Yeah, that was disappointing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a tremendous persistence story, but it's also a story of taking advantage of the opportunities that got laid out there. There were free classes. Okay, great. I'll keep learning stuff.
Yeah.
Right? But your curiosity also kept driving you. And we talk about in orientation for the boot camps, when we talk about learning to learn, we talk about the importance of curiosity, right? Yeah. And again, I think you manifested that all the way through this. So
learning how to learn, one of the things that immediately solidified my decision to be at NSS was you guys referenced Barbara Oakley, learning how to learn. That was a course that I had taken on Coursera. Learning how to learn, not just teaching people software, but teaching people how to learn. I thought that was the thing that was maybe the most important thing that NSS gave to anybody, was that teaching people how to do that.
Yeah, it's always been one of our foundational objectives for our students, because that's what your career in tech is going to be.
Yeah.
It just is, right? And again, you clearly embraced that. And I didn't realize you'd taken Learn to Learn on Coursera. Yeah. I love Barb Oakley. She's great.
That's how I know
her own story's great. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's wild. And then you had, I'd forgotten you had Charlie and Gene.
Yeah.
There's a powerhouse
Yeah.
instructing team,
Yeah.
right? But tons of experience to tap into. Those guys are both just tremendous.
Yeah. And after I graduated, I bumped into Charlie in a Publix parking lot one day, and he's like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And he said, "How you doing? Let's get lunch." So we scheduled lunch, and when we talked about everything and where I was, at the same kind of conversation, what are you doing now? Oh, just taking the next course. But he knew enough about me and my interests to talk with me about some of the things I was working on and my ideas, calling out different things. And he's like, "Oh, there's a problem you can solve right there." Just those things, those little nudges along the way that even just planted a seed of an idea in my head that made me think, well, maybe I can do that. What would that look like?
Yeah.
And that was outside of class. That was just a random bumping into somebody kind of thing. And
Sure.
those are those little nudges that kept me going.
The tech community is full of so many people like that, though,
Yes.
right? They want to see others be successful. They want to see others, particularly people that they know are enthused and energetic and curious. We all want to be peers and colleagues with people like that, right?
Yeah.
And so if it had been Gene in the parking lot, I think it probably would have been the same way.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's just amazing. Well, great story. And I'm so happy you stuck with it. And
Me too.
I'm so happy you took advantage
Yeah.
of this, because you started doing the free continuing ed before we launched the ProTech program that started in the beginning of 2025, because you took advanced SQL, I think, in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
But then since then, again, data engineering and some of the other things you've done, data structures and algorithms, whatever,
Yeah.
have all been under the ProTech, which is the program we run with free classes for our seekers, people looking for their first job in tech after they've got like a computer science degree, or people who've been laid off from tech. We do that partially funded by a grant from the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. You were taking advantage of it even before we had that option available.
Yeah.
But the whole goal of that is really trying to pay off. We've always felt, look, we're a vocational school. The whole point of a vocational school is to help people get jobs, right? Give them the skills to get the jobs. So the graduation is not the end of that process. Graduation is only a fairly important milestone
Yeah.
in that, but continuing to support the students with the career dev support and posting job openings and interview counseling support, or job search kicking it butt if it's needed. But that whole thing, and that includes the continuing to learn
Yeah.
part of it. If we can facilitate that, then that's good. That's
Yeah.
good for the community. It's good for all our students.
Yeah.
And you're a great example of somebody who took really full advantage of what was available. And it's great. It's great to see.
Yeah.
And then to see you get the payoff, getting that data engineering job is very cool.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing I
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. One thing I want to throw in on that is the difference between NSS, which is, it's a whole program and it's people and it's in relationships, versus just signing up for an online course or just learning through AI. Gabe, one of our other instructors, he helped out with the software engineering, he did the data structures algorithm. He's done all these things. He's been a part of all that. We went to DataTune in March, a conference that Ed Pearson puts on.
Right.
And so I showed up to that and I bumped into Gabe first time in the real world. And he was way taller than, everybody's always taller than you expect. At least in my world. And he's seen my journey, right? He also did the self-led front-end course that I did. So he was the one that was showing up, any questions, and he was the one I was checking in with. He's been along the whole ride. And I was talking to him in person at the DataTune conference, and I think he was asking me about my job search and everything. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm close enough to where it's time to start doing some real interviews. And that's my next step. I need to learn. And he looked at me and said, you're ready. You're ready. He's like, if you need anybody to speak for you, let me know. And that kind of stuff right there, I think, especially specifically that conversation was enough for me to say, yeah, I do have it. I'm ready to do this. That's what you get from NSS more than just signing up for a course, which you're going to get a certificate okay, cool, you did it. Hopefully you know what you're doing. With NSS, you have all this stuff built in around you to encourage you, to validate you, to build you up, and to make sure that you do have the things that you need. And if you don't, there's people there willing to get in a breakout room with you until you do, or unravel your GitHub mess that you make or whatever, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've had to do that a few times.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. Well, I love hearing that, Mark. I love hearing that because it's a real testament to the quality of the team, right? These are people that, with Charlie and Gabe, that's who they are, right? I mean, that's not, that's not something they put on occasionally. That's just who they are. And I think because of NSS's nonprofit mission, we're able to attract people that want to be supportive of people. And the people aspect of what we do it's just so important. We could all take online classes, right?
Yeah.
You only watch so much blah, blah on video, right?
Right.
And you can see a demonstration, you can try something, but boy, you get stuck on something. It's nice to have a Charlie or a Gabe or somebody in the background too. So it's great to hear. It's great to hear your thoughts on that. And we're just out in the community like everybody else. So data tune or whatever.
Yeah.
It's great. So I do have one exit question
Sure.
that I've asked, I think everybody we've ever put on the podcast. So, you were playing with technology before NSS, right? Because you were into music technology and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I always like to find out, what's your technology guilty pleasure?
Well, anybody that knows me knows that I like to mind map. And so years ago, there was this mind map software that I got into. It's called iThoughts. And the main, I think it's just one developer as far as I can tell. He basically, a few years ago, decided that he was done and he wasn't going to maintain it, which is very unfortunate because it's a great app. But my entire world is in these mind maps. All the things from my lessons, all my ideas, all the things expanding on those ideas. Yeah, I'm just like a mind map evangelist of some sorts. The fact that he's not developing that pushed me into solving my own problem of, well, I guess I'm going to have to make one for myself now so that I never have to be relying on anybody else to make this thing for me. I can make it myself. And by the way, you get to learn how to do it.
Yeah, right.
That's my thing. I've learned it's not for everyone because it's a lot going on in these mind maps, but for me, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know that I would call myself dyslexic or that kind of thing, but sometimes when you're just reading things linearly, it's just like cross-eyed blur. But for me, I can break things out. I can into a branch. I can collapse it down so that's not. It's just a way for me to kind of digest a lot of text and a lot of information and make it just manageable for me to take in.
If you can think visually like that, mind maps are tremendous tools.
Yes.
For simplifying complex relationships and knowledge stores. Have you played at all with the mind maps in Google's Notebook LM?
I have messed with that. It's pretty cool. Actually, it's really close to iThoughts in the way that you can collapse branches down and everything. And it's pretty cool that you can drop like a whole markdown file in or something, and then boom, there you go.
drop down a video, drop a couple of videos on a topic, and then ask it to mind map it's like, okay, it's kind of magic. That's cool. Yeah. Well, it's cool though that you set out to build it yourself. Man, that's awesome. That is great.
Solve your own problems. And enabled, solve your own problems. Yeah.
I have learned so many things from other people's technology guilty pleasures and gotten some real surprises along the way. That's a good one. That is good. Well, Mark, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciated having the opportunity to share your story with people because I think it's a great story of persistence. It's a great story of career change, all the things, and of continuous learning and curiosity and how that can drive a person's journey into whatever. It doesn't have to be into tech.
Yeah.
So,
Well, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for everything that you all did to help me get to where I am. I wouldn't be here without you. Seriously.
well, that's why we do what we do. And it's great to hear the success stories of people. So thanks for being with us. And thanks to all of you for listening. You can find any of the links that were mentioned in today's podcast in the show notes below. And you can hear more insights like these when you visit NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com.